What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT, and I got a lot of things that I got to get off my chest in this episode. As we already know, the final chapter has closed on the 2023 NFL Draft, but that has not stopped me from taking a peek into what we could potentially be in store for in next year's draft. And according to some reports circulating around, some scouts believe that thanks to Anthony Richardson getting drafted 4th overall by Indianapolis, that he somewhat has paved the way for Tennessee Vols quarterback Joe Milton to be a high selection potentially in next year's 2024 NFL Draft. I also want to talk to you guys about what to expect from the Baltimore Ravens offense this upcoming season, because there's a small amount of people out there, not a lot of you guys, but still a small portion, who believe that the offense that the Ravens are going to run this year is going to be no different from the offense that they've ran over the last couple of years. And if you believe that, then you're wrong. You want to know why? Because they have a new OC, and he's going to change a lot of things with this offense. They finally got my guy Lamar Jackson paid, and they also got him some help. OBJ, Zay Flowers. We're going to talk about what those guys are going to bring to the Ravens offense and how Todd Monken's offense, the Ravens' new offensive coordinator, is going to be able to elevate Lamar Jackson's game. And lastly, I got a question for you guys. At this moment, whose career would you rather have? Would you rather have the career of Lamar Jackson up to this point, being a former NFL MVP, or would you rather have the career that Joe Burrow has had up to this point, taking the Cincinnati Bengals not only to the Super Bowl in his second season, but to back-to-back AFC Conference title games? Before we get into it, if you haven't already, make sure that you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast, available on all podcasting platforms. Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from, you can find the JT Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us with a 5-star review. We will greatly appreciate it. And share this episode of the pod with your friends, family members, and acquaintances. I came across this really interesting post on Twitter by NFL Rookie Watch that says several NFL scouts reportedly believe Anthony Richardson paved the way for Joe Milton to potentially be a high selection in next year's NFL Draft. Richardson is currently listed at 6'4", 244 pounds. Milton is currently listed at 6'5", 243 pounds. Similar to Richardson, Milton is an athletic freak with what scouts call a rocket of an arm and has only started 9 games thus far. Milton is currently a senior and set for a breakout season with the Tennessee Volunteers. I was talking to Quincy Bell Sports about this not too long ago. Joe Milton has all the physical tools to be a first-round pick in next year's NFL Draft. This guy is 6'5", 243 pounds, and he has one of the strongest arms in the history of football. I'm not talking about college football. I'm talking about football overall. If you go through all of the quarterbacks who have ever thrown the football, I feel like Joe Milton has one of the strongest arms in football history. This guy has a damn bazooka for an arm. And if he has a solid season for Tennessee, I most definitely believe that he's going to get a lot of legitimate first-round hype. And I don't think he needs to have a phenomenal season or a standout season. All he really needs to do is have a productive season, and I think that his hype is going to get him into the first round. Anthony Richardson didn't have the greatest season his final year at Florida, but when you look at his physical attributes, his athleticism, his size, and his upside, those were the main reasons why Anthony Richardson got selected so high. Joe Milton, he's not the athlete that Anthony Richardson is. He's not going to run the 4.43 in the 40-yard dash. He's no slouch, though. He does have a good amount of athleticism, but I think if he was to run the 40-yard dash right now, he'll probably run maybe 4.6, 4.7, which is really good for a guy at 6'5", 243 pounds. But this is what I need to see out of Joe Milton for him to be a first-round pick in next year's draft. First of all, his pocket awareness has to get better. He isn't really that comfortable moving and stepping up inside of the pocket. Anthony Richardson's pocket awareness was a little bit better than what a lot of people give it credit for. Then Joe Milton also has to work on his mechanics. His footwork needs a lot of work. He still isn't the greatest when it comes to reading and dissecting defenses. Then, even if he does ball out and he has a good season, you're going to have the people who say, oh, he's coming from an air raid offense. He doesn't have a lot of years of consistent productivity. But I think Joe Milton definitely has all the things that you look for in quarterbacks who end up getting taken in the first round. His film probably isn't going to be the greatest, but at the same time, though, the NFL draft isn't all about film. As we've seen plenty of times throughout history, the NFL draft, when you're looking at guys who potentially are going to get drafted in the first round, you're looking for either guys who are able to come in and make an immediate impact right away and become a top 5, top 10 player at their position right off the bat, or you're drafting a guy who 2 or 3 years later down the road can develop into the best at his position because he's a 1%er. And what I mean by 1%er is sometimes you have guys who are rare athletes who are 1% athletes. Michael Parsons, Anthony Richardson, Cam Newton. Those are the kind of players who get drafted in the first round if they have that kind of athleticism. You don't find guys who are 6'5", 243 pounds every day who have this kind of athleticism and this kind of arm strength. Joe Milton, he doesn't really have a lot of experience. As a matter of fact, you probably could say he's more inexperienced than Anthony Richardson in a sense, although he has been in college a lot longer than what AR was. He only has started a handful of games, so the jury is still out on Joe Milton. He didn't really play well when he came in replace of Hendon Hooker. When he got injured against South Carolina, against Vanderbilt, he wasn't that great. But against Clemson in the Orange Bowl, he lit the world on fire. He was MVP of that game. He had a pretty good spring game. I believe that he should be able to carry that momentum into this season and have a breakout season. But will he be a first-round pick, though? I think there's a high possibility that he will be. But at the same time, though, he has to put it all together. He needs to improve his accuracy. The decision-making has to get better. If those two things improves and his pocket presence and awareness improves also, he probably could potentially be a top 15, top 10 pick. Hendon Hooker, prior to his ACL injury, he was slated to be a first-round pick, and some people even had him being the third quarterback taken off the board behind Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. It's not crazy to believe that Joe Milton could be one of the first quarterbacks taken off the board in the 2024 NFL Draft. I know a lot of people get really annoyed when players like Joe Milton get propped up because they don't have great film. They don't have a lot of experience. It's really just all about potential. But that's just kind of the direction that the NFL draft has started to take, thanks to guys such as Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, guys who were seen as project players coming out of college but had a lot of upside due to the physical tools and talent that they possessed. They went to the NFL, they received the proper coaching, they were able to put it all together, and now they're regarded as some of the best QBs in the game right now. Joe Milton, I think he most definitely has the profile that you look for in the guy who could be drafted really high in the NFL draft, although he has a lot of things that he has to work on. But the upside with that arm strength, oh my goodness. Oh my God. Like, Can you guys name me another quarterback right now in college football who has just as good or better of an arm than Joe Milton? I probably could only name one off the top of my head, and that's Michael Penix with Washington, who right now is slated to be a first-round pick in my mock draft that's coming out in a couple of days. But Anthony Richardson paving the way for Joe Milton to be a high selection in next year's draft. I don't really know if I agree wholeheartedly with that. I don't really think Anthony Richardson is paving the way for guys. I kind of think that Anthony Richardson kind of had a way already paved for him thanks to guys such as Josh Allen and Cam Newton. But let me know what you guys think about this. Do you guys think that Anthony Richardson, him getting taken 4th overall, is going to potentially help Joe Milton become a highly drafted selection in next year's NFL draft? I don't know about you, but I am really excited to watch the Baltimore Ravens offense this upcoming season. There are some people out there, not a lot of you guys, but some people who are still stuck in the past and still believe that the Ravens offense is going to remain the same. You don't know how many arguments I've been in on Twitter going back and forth with people saying, I don't know why the Ravens drafted Zay Flowers when they ain't going to be able to throw him the football. All Lamar does is run the football. The Ravens don't care about throwing the football. Listen, Greg Roman is no longer the Ravens offensive coordinator. They have a new one. His name is Todd Monken, formerly the offensive coordinator of the Georgia Bulldogs. Todd Monken helped guide Georgia to back-to-back national titles. His offenses were some of the best in college football. And remind you that Todd Monken's offenses were cooking with Stetson Bennett. For those of you guys who are listening to this and you don't really follow college football like that, and you're like, who the hell is Stetson Bennett, JT? Stetson Bennett was a walk-on quarterback, meaning that Todd Monken essentially had called plays for one of college football's best offenses with a guy who had to walk on to make the team in the toughest conference in college football. And yet he was able to produce some of the nation's best offenses with Stetson Bennett at the helm. That should tell you just how good of an offensive coordinator Todd Monken is. He got Stetson Bennett drafted to the league, and this guy was a walk-on. And if you are somebody who's like, okay, JT, that's college, what's he going to do in the NFL? I'm glad you asked, because Todd Monken also has several years calling plays as the OC at the NFL level. Prior to becoming the OC for Georgia, he previously was the OC for the Cleveland Browns, although he didn't call the plays. Freddie Kitchens did. And before that, he was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in his final season in Tampa Bay. He called the plays, and Tampa Bay's offense was really explosive. You had Ryan Fitzmagic, who was going off. He got off to a hot start early in the season, and then he kind of started to fade down the stretch. And then Jameis Winston came in, and he did a pretty good job under Todd Monken. One thing that you can expect from Todd Monken's offense is way more balance. You can expect better, more advanced passing concepts, which is something that a lot of Ravens fans always harped on Greg Roman about. Some people called Greg Roman's passing concepts high school-esque. You look at Todd Monken, one thing that he does a very good job at is generating explosive plays in the passing game. You look at the receiving core that the Ravens have going into 2023. You got OBJ. When he's fully healthy, I still believe that he's one of the best receivers in the game. You got Rashad Bateman, who, although he still hasn't really proven much up to this point of his career, he still has shown flashes at times of what he could be when he's healthy. You drafted Zay Flowers, who was my number one ranked receiver coming out of this year's draft class. Very fluid, runs great routes, explosive after the catch. He's a dynamic athlete with the ball in his hands. let's not also forget about Mark Andrews, who happens to be one of the top 3 or top 5 best tight ends in the NFL right now. And we already know about the stable of running backs that the Ravens have, J.K. Dobbins, the Gus Bus. But now Lamar Jackson has officially signed his new contract. And I'm really excited to see how Lamar Jackson's game develops under Todd Monken's tutelage. Lamar Jackson, we know how great of a runner he is, how dynamic he is when he decides to run the football, and the Ravens utilize that a lot. Greg Roman put Lamar Jackson in the offense that helped him develop in his earlier years, but over the last couple of years, Lamar Jackson has kind of been stagnant. Ever since his MVP season happened, he hasn't really had the same success. You wonder why? Because Greg Roman wasn't able to help Lamar Jackson take that next step in his development, and that was making Lamar Jackson a more efficient passer. Lamar Jackson outgrew Greg Roman, which is why they had to move on from Greg Roman. If the Ravens are going to win a Super Bowl, and if Lamar Jackson is going to deliver on his draft day promise to the Ravens when he said, they're going to get a Super Bowl out of me, he has to take that next step in his development when it comes to being a more proficient passer. And he's not a bad passer. I'm not trying to knock Lamar Jackson's passing ability in any sense. This guy is a solid passer, but he could become a better passer under Todd Monken. And when you look at Lamar Jackson's postseason struggles, the reason why he only has one playoff win is because when he gets into the playoffs, he doesn't really do a good job at throwing the football. And you can say the Ravens haven't done a good job surrounding him with the needed weapons to do that, whatever. But I find it ironic that Lamar Jackson's lone playoff win against the Tennessee Titans, do you remember how the Ravens put that game on ice? Lamar Jackson had a big late game rushing touchdown that helped the Ravens win that wild card game against Tennessee a couple years back. I find it ironic that Lamar Jackson, in his only playoff win and the biggest moment of the game, won that game not with his arm, but with his legs. With Todd Monken calling plays at OC, with Lamar Jackson's running ability, plus coupled with the fact that there's going to be better passing concepts, better route combinations, it's going to be really hard to stop this Ravens offense. Because how are you going to game plan for it? It's not going to be a one-dimensional offense where you know they're going to pound the rock 30, 40 times a game. Now this is actually going to be a balanced offense. Over the last couple of years, when Greg Roman was the OC in Baltimore, the Ravens ranked top 3 or top 5 in the NFL in rushing attempts per game and ranked near the bottom of the barrel in the league when it came to passing attempts per game. Under Todd Monken, you're definitely going to see that increase. You're probably still going to see a good amount of 2 tight end, maybe 3 tight end sets, but it's not going to be as frequent as what you saw with Greg Roman. It's just about, throwing different things out there, giving the defense different looks. And Todd Monken has a very good track record when it comes to being an offensive coordinator, not just in college football, but in the NFL. There were a couple of other teams who also were interested in trying to get Todd Monken also. You look at this offense with OBJ, Mark Andrews, Lamar, Zay Flowers. I'm really excited to see what the Ravens do this season. And this is coming from somebody who is a huge fan of Lamar Jackson. Okay, I've been a big supporter of Lamar Jackson ever since he first decided to declare for the NFL draft. You can go back and watch my earlier videos when I said that Lamar Jackson was going to change the quarterback position and evolutionize it. I think that this Ravens offense with Todd Monken this season is probably going to be the best Ravens offense that we've seen since they won the Super Bowl against the San Francisco 49ers a decade and some change ago. That's how excited I am about this Ravens offense. You got Zay Flowers, who can make things happen after the catch. You also have good deep threats such as Mark Andrews. You have an offense that's going to be able to do damn near anything. You want to run QB power with Lamar Jackson? You can still do that. You can still use design quarterback runs with Lamar Jackson. Just because you have a new OC doesn't mean that you have to get away completely from everything that made you successful. You can still utilize Lamar Jackson's legs. You have to. That's what makes Lamar Jackson the player that he is, because of how polarizing he is when he decides to tuck the football and run. If you listen to any NFL player that plays on the defense side of the football describe what it's like going against Lamar Jackson, they make it seem like this guy is the real life version of the Flash. And you couple that with the fact that he now has a legitimate wide receiving core to throw the football with and not just Mark Andrews, then you're giving him a real offensive coordinator that knows how to truly run a balanced offense. I'm really excited about this Ravens offense this season, and I'm not even a Ravens fan. You guys know I'm a Steelers fan, but you guys already know I don't really care about all that. I don't really give a damn who I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of the NFL first. I don't let my fandom cloud my judgment when it comes to assessing and analyzing how good said teams are going to be. The Ravens damn near could make it to the Super Bowl this year. Their defense was already really good last season. It just was their offense. As long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy, I think the Ravens are going to have one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL this season. And even if Lamar Jackson gets hurt, we was talking about how Greg Roman held back Lamar Jackson's development, but he also held back Snoop's development. Snoop was a Pro Bowler last season. And you can also say that he kind of was held back by Greg Roman's system. Now with Todd Monken, hopefully Tyler Huntley ends up improving slightly. This Ravens offense is probably going to be the most dynamic offense that we've seen from Baltimore in the last couple of years. You got guys who can make things happen after the catch. You have guys who can make plays down the field. You got speed. You have explosiveness. And you have an offensive coordinator who's going to specialize in making sure that this offense generates a lot of big plays in the passing game. This is truly going to be an all-around balanced offense. They're going to be efficient throwing the football, and they're going to be effective running the football. Let me know what you guys think about the Baltimore Ravens offense going into the 2023 NFL season, and what are your expectations for this offense this year? All right, I need you guys to do me a favor. I just got into this really heated debate on Twitter, and I want you guys to comment down below if you're listening to this episode of the podcast on YouTube if I'm wrong. Let me know if I'm tripping. So the NFL posted a video about Lamar Jackson's promise to deliver the Baltimore Ravens a Super Bowl, right? Now somebody replies and he says, if you can't get them a Super Bowl in the next 3 years, then dude, I'm sorry, but trade you or something, because I'm not going to waste my time or money, dude, because even Burrow and Hurts have made it farther than you. And then this guy T. Forrest replies, right now, whose career would you rather have? Lamar's or Burrow? And Pickett to Pickens season replies, shout out to my fellow Steeler brethren out there. He says Burrow by a landslide, which I agree with. And T. Forrest replies and says, teaches on, but if I was asked personally, if I'd rather be an MVP and be voted the number one player by players in all of the NFL, all while having a mid team around me, or get to the Super Bowl with potential Hall of Famers and lose, I don't know. I think the former is where I'll go, but again, teaches on. And then I responded, because you know I got to give my 2 cents, because this is Twitter. Everybody has the right to opinion, right? I said, I'd rather be known as the QB that took my team to the Super Bowl behind the worst offensive line in Super Bowl history. And then T. Forrest replies, and he says, "You're kidding, right? When Burrow had a terrible offensive line, it was his rookie year. In 21, bro was covered. So you know what I had to do? I had to do what any logical person would have to do to back up their claims. Go on Google and look up some information. So you know what I did? I went to my laptop, I typed in a simple sentence, right? And all I asked Google was, who was the most sacked quarterback in 2021? Oh, surprise, surprise! Joe Burrow was the most sacked quarterback in 2021, 51 times. And if you want to include his sack numbers in the postseason, he was sacked a combined total of 70 times throughout the regular season and the postseason, the year he took Cincinnati to the Super Bowl. And then I also went even a step further and posted a screenshot. Who was the most sacked quarterback in the 2021 NFL playoffs? Oh, surprise, surprise, it was Joe Burrow, who was sacked 19 times. Funny, that shouldn't really be a surprise to nobody because the dude got sacked 10 times against Tennessee. He's the only quarterback to have a playoff win despite being sacked double-digit times in a single game. And you know what they say? I say, come on, man, because come on, man, it's not hard to Google these things. It's not hard to find out this information. Like, people on Twitter just take so much pride in being wrong, right? And I'm about to show you. Pickett to Pickens season. My fellow Steelers brethren says sacks are a QB stat. Maybe be more mobile or throw the ball faster, ? You only want to blame the line because you love throwing Burrow. Kind of weird, man. So, Pickett to Pickens says sacks are a QB stat. If you're more mobile or you throw the ball faster, you won't get sacked as many times, which does make sense. But I had to go show him how Russell Wilson was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL during his final season in Seattle in 2020, and he was sacked 52 times. Isn't he mobile? What about Deshaun Watson? He was the third most sacked quarterback that same season, and he's mobile too, isn't he? Isn't Deshaun Watson one of the best dual threat QBs in the NFL? So, you know what? They respond. I say, so how Russell Wilson was the most sacked QB in 2020, along with Deshaun Watson, plus Justin Fields and Daniel Jones were the two most sacked quarterbacks this past season, despite having elite mobility and athleticism. And then he responds and says, being mobile doesn't avoid sacks on his own. Brady avoided sacks by ripping defenses apart, throwing the ball within 2 seconds. Burrow holds the ball too long. I don't know why you acting like he doesn't. It's his only flaw. And then I responded and said, you got to hold the ball a long time to allow those deep passing plays to develop. Because if you're trying to take shots downfield, those deep passing plays just don't come open in 2 to 3 seconds. It takes time for deep vertical routes down the field to develop. I said you got to hold the ball long if you want to get vertical passing plays deep downfield. How are you going to convert a 3rd and long throwing a 3-yard check down? So you know what he does? He goes ahead and he posts Joe Burrow throwing a halfback swing to Samaje Perine for a touchdown and says, Joe checks down. Literally did it all season. Did you watch? Now remind you that this is being thrown on Pittsburgh's 8-yard line inside of the 10 on 2nd and goal. They're blitzing. Everybody's going upfield to block. It's pretty obvious that this is a halfback swing, right? And then I even went further to break it down for him, right? Because, you know, sometimes people just don't understand what certain plays are. This wasn't a design play where when you had everybody going out for routes and Joe Burrow just threw the check down to Samaje Perine. No, this was a designed halfback swing. The halfback goes out for a swing, Joe Burrow dumps it to him, and the wide receivers block upfield. It's basically another version of a halfback screen. And I said, because that's not third and long, that's second and goal at the 8. And plus, that was a designed halfback swing, as you can tell, because the wide receivers are already blocking as soon as Burrow makes the throw. And then I tell him, I'm a Steelers fan too. Bet he didn't know this. Tell me where all those checkdowns got us Big Ben's final season. Our offensive line, Big Ben's final season in 2020 was so bad that Big Ben had to throw 5-yard slants and out routes and drags just to get the ball out in time. Y'all remember that? And the fact that Pittsburgh was not a threat to stretch the field allowed defenses to play up close on the line and play on those short passing routes. And then T. Forrest responds and says, got y'all to 11-0, and that Browns playoff game, man, that was just bad luck, to be honest. Yeah, it was bad luck that the Steelers lost their opening wild card round matchup to an interim head coach because Kevin Stefanski was unable to coach that game because he came down with the CVID. Okay. So y'all let me know if I'm tripping. Whose career up to this point would you rather have? Joe Burrow's or Lamar Jackson? And then answer me this. Is sacks completely a quarterback-driven stat? Like, quarterbacks do have a factor when it comes to how many times they get sacked. If they truly do hold the ball a long time or they don't have good pocket awareness. But that's not Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow played behind one of the worst offensive lines in the history of the NFL. And probably the worst offensive line to ever make the Super Bowl. But yet, this man's going to go ahead and say, oh, Joe Burrow had a good offensive line in 2021. If the offensive line was so good, how come following the Super Bowl in the offseason, they replaced nearly the whole entire offensive line? Literally, they replaced like 4 out of 5 starters. Cincinnati went into this past season with pretty much a completely new offensive line with completely new faces. I really don't understand how sacks are completely a quarterback-driven stat. I would take Joe Burrow carrying a team with a bad offensive line to the Super Bowl versus winning a MVP. MVP awards are nice and all, but they don't get you deadly squat when it comes to getting the recognition that you deserve. Nobody remembers how many times you win MVP in the NFL. Lamar Jackson won MVP in 2019, and how does that help his case? Like, you won the Super Bowl years ago. Would you rather win a Super Bowl years ago or win a MVP years ago? I'd rather win a Super Bowl ring years ago than win a MVP award years ago. MVP awards are nice accolades to have, but championships are what people remember the most. You want to know why Tom Brady is the most popular player in NFL history? Him and OBJ are maybe the two only NFL players who are known worldwide. You could go to Japan, China, Africa, and everybody know who Tom Brady and OBJ are. When you look at Joe Burrow, the fact that he's been able to take Cincinnati to back-to-back AFC Championship games and beat Patrick Mahomes in one of those and take them to the Super Bowl when nobody expected Cincinnati to make it to the Super Bowl is something that more people remember about Joe Burrow compared to Lamar Jackson winning MVP in 2019. We live in a world that asks, what have you done for me lately? Nobody gives a damn what you did 3 years ago. People care about what you did recently. Lamar Jackson won NFL MVP in 2019. Joe Burrow took the Cincinnati Bengals behind one of the worst offensive lines in the history of the NFL to a Super Bowl. And although they lost, that's pretty damn impressive. People are always going to remember Joe Burrow taking Cincinnati to the Super Bowl that year. You want to know why? Because nobody expected it. It was random as hell. Imagine me telling you before the 2021 season, oh yeah, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals are going to make it to the Super Bowl. You probably would have laughed at me, and you probably would have been a little bit cocky. You probably been like, JT, you really think the Bengals going to make it to the Super Bowl? Put your money where your mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is, and you would have betted a lot of money, and you would have lost. Nobody knew that Cincinnati was going to be as good as what they were. That season, they lost to the Rams in the championship. More people are going to remember that decades down the road than they are Lamar Jackson winning NFL MVP in 2019. Joe Burrow changed the Cincinnati Bengals organization. Before Joe Burrow arrived in Cincy, what were the Bengals known for? Being cheap, not willing to dish out the money that it takes to compete for a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow comes along. He tears his ACL his rookie season. And what does Cincinnati start doing? They start trying to spend money to improve the team and get Joe Burrow some weapons. After they lost that Super Bowl, you know what they did? They invested a lot of money into improving the offensive line. If I had to pick which one, I'd rather be known for being the quarterback who took my team to the Super Bowl where nobody expected us to, being the ultimate Cinderella, the ultimate underdog story versus winning a NFL MVP in 2019 and being bounced out in the divisional round by the Tennessee freaking Titans, even though I went into the postseason that year as the favorite to make it out of the AFC. I'd rather be known for exceeding expectations where nobody had high expectations for me anyway versus winning an NFL MVP and not living up to the lofty expectations that I had going into that season. All throughout the whole entire year, everybody was pretty much considering the Ravens to be the best team in the NFL. And then they come off their first round bye and they get smacked around by the Tennessee Titans. And the only thing Lamar Jackson has to show for that season is winning NFL MVP. You guys let me know what you guys think. Which one would you rather have? Would you rather have Lamar Jackson's career up to this point or Joe Burrow's career up to this point? I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. Remember that every video and episode of the podcast that's uploaded on the channel is available in audio format on all podcasting platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. And I will see you guys shortly with another episode.